And then the other one I would, look at that obviously I've talked about and research is like, the vitamin D. That's also, you got vitamin D receptors in your brain and your muscle as well. But since we're talking about cognition, vitamin D being very important for cognitive health, even mood. A paper was led by one of my students, Kelly Shad, who I think still on active duty out there. Hopefully, she's a brilliant student, and I'm sure is doing great things as a brilliant dietitian. But we were able to pull data from medical treatment facilities starting in Texas all the way up to Alaska, looking at depression and vitamin D deficiency diagnosis, and we found that relationship, and it only got stronger the further you went north. Susan, as previously being stationed at Fort Lewis, I'm sure you can
Yes.
relate to that.
Yes, I am very much. I don't know if you ever go back and watch the previous episode, you can definitely see the different shades of. I'm much more tan living down here in the South versus
Did your vitamin D
up.
levels go up?
They did actually. They were actually, and I'm slightly ashamed to admit this, but my vitamin D levels, I had them checked before I left Washington or right after I left Washington as we came down to Georgia, and they were surprisingly low. As a dietitian, I feel like they should have been higher. However, I definitely have seen an increase in my vitamin D levels being here. I've also, of course, just been making sure that I'm supplementing with my vitamin D. But definitely, I did see a difference. Admittedly, too, I think I was dealing with like this is just I'm going off on a sidebar now. Dealing with some like potential seasonal depression,
Yeah.
and I admittedly after we moved to the South, it's been a couple of years now. Being back down here, I would say my husband and I both have noticed like a noticeable difference just in our day to day moods.
It's a thing. As
Yeah.
somebody who we loved our time stationed outside of Boston. We were in Natick, Massachusetts. We loved our time, on the Hudson, stationed there at West Point. However, I remember a point in May, and maybe it's 2021, right around that time. We did our interview, going outside and it snowed in May,
Mm.
and I was just like, I just remember this feeling of being like, I'm over it. I'm like, I'm over it. And then on the flip side, I live here in Houston. Now, there are hot days. I question decisions, but in
Yeah.
December, going out in t-shirt and shorts and going for a run or a ruck and be like, this is amazing. So
Yes.
yeah, it's a thing.
Yes. Absolutely. So big fan of the vitamin D here. And it's so difficult to get through food. I mean, there's really like,
It's
you
challenging.
know, it is really challenging. And it's also just challenging. Like none of us are really outside enough at the right time of day with the right sun exposure, I feel like, even if you're living in the South sometimes
Yeah.
to get enough vitamin D.
No, that was one of my so for my dissertation we used soldiers at Fort Hood. So Clay, Texas, some of the most sun you're going to get, right, in that environment in the US, and still 40% were insufficient or deficient in vitamin D. So it's a thing. Like
Yeah.
it's just really hard to get.